Greetings Linux users, this is a tutorial on how to install Void Linux with advanced partitioning. Step number 1, for your given motherboard you want to disable legacy boot, and the option to do so depends dramatically on the motherboard. And on the Ryzen platform on B50, what you have to select is CSM support, and you have to disable that. And it's disabled right here, and it's disabled, so I'm just going to save and exit. And I'm going to make sure that I'm able to select my boot device on demand, and I just want to make sure that I pick the UEFI boot option for my USB device, and I'm going to boot Void Linux. I'm going to log in as anon, Void Linux as password. I'm going to type fdisk-l, and this is going to list the disks that you have. And in my case, I'm interested in the first one. So what I'm going to do, type sudo wipe fs-a/dev/my device NVMe 0N1. I'm going to erase a bunch of stuff. I'm going to run it again, and there's nothing. It doesn't return anything, which is a good sign. Now I'm going to run the installer. Sudo void installer. Now before I configure the whole installer, I just want to make sure that I can copy all the files and install the bootloader to my device. So to do that, I'm just going to give it a root password. I'll pick root, and then I'm going to pick the bootloader, select my device, use a graphical terminal for the bootloader, yes. Now I'm going to partition. I select my device, cfdisk, and it gives me some information here, but I'll tell you what to do exactly. Next screen is vital. If you don't see it, you might as well just abandon the whole installation right now. UEFI and Void Linux require GPT to install. So I selected GPT. Now I'm going to create my first partition. It's going to be 100 megabytes, so I'm going to type 100 capital M. Okay, and crucially, do not change the partition type. Here we're simply making Linux partitions. In the next step, we're going to be allocating the mount points and the type of file systems that each partition is using. And I just want to mention that you cannot create a boot partition and you cannot create a USR partition. You cannot create a boot partition because this 100 megabyte partition we've just created is going to be a FAT32 partition, and the boot partition that you would create would be likely an extended 4 partition, and so there would be a conflict there and the installer would fail. As for USR, Void Linux simply does not allow it because it would create problems. It would throw all kinds of errors because they've done work on simplifying the Linux file tree and making everything more compatible. And if you play with how Linux is mounted vis-a-vis USR, then you disrupt all the good that they've done and introduce more problems. So they strictly forbid you from installing USR. They'll give you an error. So we're going to create every partition except for boot and USR. First one I'm going to create is the general /partition. I'm going to make it 50 gigabytes. And like I said, the mount points we do that in the next step, which is a little odd because most partitioning software you do it all in one step. All right, now I'm going to create the temporary partition. So it's going to be, for me, I'm going to make it 25 gigabytes. And that just means that, assuming that partition was empty, I could download a 25 gigabyte file with Firefox, and it would transfer from the temporary folder to the home folder with no problems. As for the 50 gigabyte main partition, that is mainly for the being able to mount large files as well as the general program files. Now I'm going to create a var partition. I'm going to make it 15 gigabytes. And now I'm going to create a home partition. I'm going to make it 386.8 gigabytes. Now I'm going to select right over here, press enter, and type yes. And in blue, the partition table has been altered. Now we can quit. Next step, we're going to configure the file systems. Select the first partition, which is 100 megabytes. Select FAT32. The mount point for that is going to be boot FI. And say yes. And then we're going to go to partition 2. That's going to be extended 4. Mount point is going to be /. And we're going to go partition 3. It's going to be extended 4 /TMP. Partition 4. It's going to be extended 4 /var. Now I'm going to go to partition 5, and that's going to be extended 4 /home. Now, vis-a-vis fstab and mounting USR and boot as read-only, or setting options like no dev and so on and so forth, that can still be done if you use the bind option in fstab. But I'm told, or I've read rather, that bind does not always honor the read-only option. So just be careful with that, as well as you can make a script that runs on each boot to remount each directory as you so fit, should that be read-only or however you want. So now that that's done, let's see if we can install successfully. Alright, so it's asking if I want to reboot the system. I'm going to say no. And now I can go through all the options from keyboard to user account and set those, and then select install again, and then my system will be installed as I desired. And that's it.